Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. It is a beautiful, chilly morning here in the Ozarks after the not heavy rain, but it was just enough of a weather change coming in a couple of days ago, bringing in a little bit of rain, but it's brought in some cool temperatures. Yesterday was very nearly what most normal thinking people would consider is a perfect weather day, and today probably going to be pretty much the same. I apologize for not getting a late night video out last night. I've been doing those here lately, but late yesterday afternoon I got toned out for a structure fire, a house fire. By the time I got done doing that, for those few of you that have been a firefighter in the past, you're just kind of exhausted. I didn't really feel like coming back and making a video, so I just kind of finished my rest yesterday evening, but all was good. House was saved. You know, there was definitely some fire damage, but I think it's repairable. Most of the inside was able to be saved, and there were no injuries, so all things considered, it was a good fire. So the president has signed an executive order, and you know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know yet. But the president signed an executive order changing the Department of War to the Department of Defense to the Department of War. So it's the DOW now, not the DOD. Of course, there's still some, uncertainty of the legality of that. It's been traditionally and expected to be done by Congress. And it's very likely that Congress will go ahead and soon, make some kind of declaration that they, agree with it. But the point that I'm getting to is, interesting enough, kind of the first, it seems, usage of the Department of War and whatever is the president kind of almost declaring war on an American city with the Department of War. The president posted this on his social media. Obviously an AI-generated image of him in a military uniform, reminiscing the movie Apocalypse Now. Basically in a sort of way threatening Chicago to go to war against them. That Chicago's going to find out what the Department of War is, and then the Chipocalypse Now. Chicago's got some serious crime issues. I mean, there's people out there saying this, and they're not incorrect, that depending on the parameters you look at, the per capita crime rate has actually gone down over the years. But there's, some of you know what I'm talking about because you look into it. It depends on what parameters you use. You can find this city here is the worst crime city in the world because crime for, one murder per 10,000 people, or is it one murder per 100,000 people, or it changes the parameters. But that's a completely, I think, irrelevant argument. Chicago has a crime issue. Okay, most people don't really have a desire to up and move to Chicago, especially certain areas of Chicago. But on the other hand, do we want the U.S. government declaring war against an American city? Do we want to open that Pandora's box, regardless of who's president, no matter how good they may be? I'm throwing out some questions of what do you think about this? Yeah, I get it. There's illegals, there's drugs, there's human trafficking. It's crime in a lot of places, not everywhere, but a lot of places in Chicago. But do we want to be declaring actual war and sending the military, the Department of War, in there now? And I don't know. I'm a little, I don't like it. Okay. And it's because I try to see the bigger picture of things, that what is done by this president could be done by another president. And maybe this is the president that does all the bad things. Who knows? But, it's setting a precedent. We have to realize that a president and the government is not there for us. They're there for supposed to be there for everybody. They're supposed to be a servant of all people, regardless of left or right. Yes, adhering to a constitutional guideline, but, just because someone's on the Republican side in office and we're going to go after the Democrats, well, the Democrats can do the same thing, and they have. And that's part of the problem here in America is these two-party, two sides of one party, basically, two sides of the same coin, two wings of the same bird, issue that we have. That's why our founding fathers, most of them, did not agree and like political parties. And here we are in America, it's absurd. Anyways, that's not where I wanted to go with this. You all understand that for the most part. But war does seem to be on the menu. It's like all of a sudden, President Trump and his whole White House is, the campaign trail was no new wars. We're going to bring about peace. And then something has changed, or maybe this was the plan all along, but now it's just war, war, war. A few days back, the then DOD, the U.S. military, attacked and blew up a Venezuelan boat. They claim it was a drug boat. Very likely it was. Although, some people can make a pretty good argument. Why did it have 11 people on it? Usually they only have a few so that they can carry more drugs. Who knows? Who knows? The bigger issue is that according to international law, that's a war crime. Using the military to destroy and kill civilians would be considered a war crime. Vice President J.D. Vance has fired back online that he doesn't give a doo-doo. He used a different word, but he doesn't give a doo-doo, if that's what it is. This is the problem. Our founders understood it. I've tried to express this to people, not just here on YouTube, but in life for many years, is that powerful governments are dangerous, even if they're doing good things. Because sometimes good things can be bad, and this is just a conundrum. And I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but the point that I'm trying to make is that the war stance, the pro-war stance, is becoming more and more obvious. China and Russia have weighed in on the United States seemingly to get ready to go to war against Venezuela. The reports are coming out that the White House and the Pentagon are actively considering, there doesn't seem that there's been any confirmed decision, but at least considering attacking certain sites inside of Venezuela, air raids basically, to take out, drug cartels and, maybe manufacturing sites, things like that. And China and Russia, they have, a lot of stuff in Venezuela. China has dumped about $100 billion into Venezuela to build up, its oil producing, facilities and things like that. Iran has a lot of money in Venezuela. They manufacture a lot of weapons and stuff. And so here again, we're threatening, or at least it seems that we may be doing more attacks into Venezuela. And you've got, of course, the same ones, China, Russia, Iran, and everything, pushing back. The United States has been, the Marines have been actively in the last few days doing amphibious drills in Puerto Rico, which appears as if they're practicing getting ready to do that in Venezuela, maybe. Over the last 24 hours, there's been a lot of GPS jamming in the Caribbean. It's had the Venezuelan government on edge. Does that mean it's going to happen? This is the same kind of MO that, say, Israel did with Iran. They would do that several times, possibly just because of its training, but most likely to kind of keep Venezuela on edge. And then at some point, one of those GPS jammings will actually be the real one. So right now, everything looks like we are preparing for an imminent attack on Venezuela. And when I say imminent, I'm not talking hours or even a few days. It could be a few weeks. But that's what it looks like. And so just, yes, drugs bad, 100%, never done them, don't want them. It just, even with like things like marijuana legal, and I'm not into that. But on the other hand, are we willing to open Pandora's box again by attacking a foreign nation? It's a muddy mess, I'll admit, but I think we're opening ourselves up for quite a bit. And you have to understand also, remember, Venezuela's in our hemisphere. They're not really that far away. I'm going to assume, I don't know this for certain, but I would assume if China and Russia have the relationship that they do with Venezuela, it's very likely that Venezuela already has Chinese or Russian weapons, in country that could possibly attack the southern United States. Because it's not that far away. And so we need to keep that in mind. That if this thing starts to get bigger and bigger, that the actual United States would be the threat. With Russia and China where they're at, about the only thing that they could hit us with, unless they have a sub parked off of our coast, is ICBMs. But Venezuela is not that far away. I mean, in a manner of speaking, prospectively. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. We're watching this buildup of war, which is, again, the exact opposite of what this president campaigned for. And it seems like, at least for now, that he's abandoned the war peace thing when it comes to Russia. There's talk now, the flip-flopping back and forth. We're not going to support Ukraine anymore, but we're going to sell them lots and lots of weapons. And the latest, just a couple of days ago, is that, and this one is strange, that we're going to sell Ukraine about $100 billion in weapons package, and they're going to pay for it by giving us some of their advanced military technology. I wasn't aware that Ukraine had that much advanced military technology. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But these days, not much does. So it almost sounds like it's a way to give them a bunch of weapons and claim that, oh, they paid us back and their advanced technology, all those, Timu drones that they've been getting and using. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do have some kind of secret advanced technologies, Maybe they're the ones flying around in all the UFOs. Who knows? The point is that we need to get ready. I think that's part of the reason why gold is skyrocketing. It's still going up. I think that's why we're seeing signs and symptoms. For those of you that kind of study these kinds of matters, there's things in the economy, there's things in the job markets, all this, it's starting to show, and that's going to just expand. These tariffs and sanctions and trade wars and stuff are starting to have their effect. It's been in the news the last couple of days that, like, the soybean farmers, they're going under. I mean, they're going to collapse. 25% or so of our soybeans are sold to China. And now that's not happening because of all of this. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Prices of stuff are going up, even though they're going to tell you over and over again from the White House that inflation doesn't even exist. It's so low. You and I all know that that's the biggest bunch of baloney you've ever heard. I mean, it's no different than the baloney that came out of the Biden administration. And so when you look at all these signs and symptoms, you can see that the world is starting to become a little nervous. The powers, the governments, the corporations and stuff. It's kind of like everyone's preparing themselves for a bigger war. Now, again, I don't have a timeline on this. I think the way things are looking, at least with Venezuela, it's going to happen sooner, pretty soon. I don't think it'll be just immediately a big war. We'll start attacking certain sites in Venezuela, and then maybe they'll retaliate a little bit, and then maybe China, and we might see some cyber attacks, or we might see them trying to put economic sanctions on us. It's a whole big mess. It's a big mess, and so we need to prepare for that more and more, because these things are happening sooner, folks. We're over halfway through 2025. And if you look at all the dates that, the 2030, yes, that's the big one. But most of the dates of all these plans to change the world over happen between 2027, 2028. The AI, all that there, those are the numbers that you constantly hear. Oh, we're going to have this system up and running in 2027. Oh, we're going to finish this in 2020. We're going to implement this in 2028, 2027. That's not that far away, folks. Year and a half, 2 years. So I would strongly suggest you start really buckling down. Maybe not for you're buckling down for you've got 48 hours, but you're buckling down because you've got months before things really start changing. And it's going to just progressively get more obvious. You need to get your houses in order and prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.